Executive Director of Youth Diversion, a not-for-profit organization that works with youth ages 6 through 18, encouraging them to strengthen themselves so that they may in turn strengthen their futures. Joanna also teaches the Community Justice Program at St. Clair College, much of which she has designed and developed herself. The program is one of a kind in Ontario. Additionally, she developed 2 courses for St. Clair College's degree program, the Bachelor of Legal and Justice Studies. Joanna has provided keynote addresses at numerous professional conferences on subjects pertaining to youth justice, social media, bullying and body image, and she also provides ongoing training on youth justice to police officers across Windsor, Essex County. She has a passion for working with people with intellectual disabilities and has done extensive work in this area throughout the community. And so without further ado, let me introduce Joanna Conrad.
Steal the mouse from you when you picture it. Perfect. Thank you. So just before I speak, I'm just going to set this up. See, maybe I need glasses. I make fun of my husband because I say he's blind, and here I am, I can't even see. Okay, so good morning. Thank you everyone for having me. I keep saying to everyone that I meet, kudos to all of you for meeting this early in the morning. What dedication. So impressive. I can barely get people to come together for board meetings sometimes, let alone in the morning, and so many. So thank you for being here, and thank you for having me. And thank you for the lovely introduction as well. So I do teach at the college. I've been teaching it for 11 years. Actually, I teach in the Community Justice Program. I do a number of different courses there, but the one that I did design was the Restorative Justice Program, or the course rather. And the reason why I had been asked to do that was because I've had quite a bit of experience in the restorative justice field, which really ties closely into what youth diversion does and what we're going to be talking about today. So if you have any questions for me, I'm not sure how you typically do things. If you would like to ask me as I go, that's fine. Happy to answer questions as we go or save them for the end. So youth diversion, essentially our mission has always been to work with young people and try to strengthen them, to provide them with appropriate tools to make good decisions going forward. We've changed drastically over the last, I would say 12 years especially. And a lot of that has to do with a number of things, specifically the online world. So I don't know if anyone here has ever heard of youth diversion before. Has anyone ever heard? Yes. Oh, okay. So I'm impressed. So we've actually been around since 1980. And when I say that, most people are shocked because a lot of people did not know about us, do not know about us, or know that we've been around for that long. And the reason why I think that is because prior to, I want to say, so I hope anyway, prior to 2012-ish, give or take, if you were involved with youth diversion, it wasn't necessarily something that you were proud of. And so people weren't necessarily the most, willing to share with others because really the stigma was that you were a bad kid, you were involved with us because you had contact with the police or the courts. And so of course, most parents weren't running around saying, hey, guess what? This is what my Johnny or Susie did, right? But also our service delivery changed drastically. So when I joined Youth Diversion in 2009, we only worked with kids that were 12 to 17. They were referred to us by the police or the courts. And if you know anything about the legislation when it comes to young people, it's also changed. So in 1980, we were with the Young Offender Act. And as of 2003, we became involved with the legislation, the Youth Criminal Justice Act. So change in terms of how we work with people, young people specifically, in terms of the models, whereas before it was a much more crime control model, and now we have a much more rehabilitative model. So the perspective has changed, but also with respect to what we actually do as an organization and how we adhere to working with youth. So again, when I started, most of the kids were coming through for theft, mischief. Again, they were avoiding a formal criminal charge. So essentially what that means is they're trying to provide them with a second chance, right? So again, and the thing is, we all make mistakes. I always say kids make poor choices. That's how they learn. That's how they explore. Depending on how big of a mistake that is, of course, and depending on the foundation that they have also matters. And so typically they'd be referred, they do a program with us, they'd be assigned to do some sanctions or measures, and I'll kind of get into that. And then essentially if they were successful, then they were able to forego having a criminal record, which of course we know impacts a young person, or it can impact them drastically, which I'll also get into. So come 2010-ish, we started really seeing a need from parents, especially, that were saying, you know, my Johnny here is involved with diversion, but what about his younger brother or sister? There's nothing in the community that is adhering to sort of these issues that they're having, or maybe providing an intervention, and they're going down the same path. And so, you know, it really got us to think, like, what can we do here? So we started thinking, okay, well, you know what, maybe we will apply for some funding and we'll open the door, because at that time there really was nothing in the community for kids that were exhibiting at-risk behaviors that needed sort of, you know, an intervention of some sort, that were not involved in the criminal justice system, especially for that young. So we got funding from the Ontario Trillium Foundation. We opened up the outreach service delivery, which essentially meant you were able to come to youth diversion, access our programs and services. If anything, perhaps have access to our workers that can then connect you with services in the community that perhaps you're unaware of. And again, provide that intervention so that they don't have to be involved with police. Because at that point, even though we say it's preventative, once the young person's already been involved with police, it's already reactive in my mind. That's not preventative. Being preventative means you're proactive. You're dealing with something before it even happens. So that was our plan. And then, as I'm sure you all know, 2010-ish is also when the smartphone became readily available to the public, right? Became economically available, and it also became the central issue when it comes to the work that we do. Never did I thought or think in my life that I was going to be sort of this, you know, social media presenter of sorts, or, you know, that this was going to be essentially inundating my life. It has, and it's not something that we asked for. It really fell into our lap. And so what ended up happening was in 2012, Windsor Police actually reached out and said, listen, we have all of these cases of sexting. We don't want to be charging these kids. What can we do here? Because legislation, even to this day, has not caught up with technology. And so they said, what are we going to do? We know that there's a stigma that's associated with young people, especially if they're labeled as a criminal, right? Not to mention if they are associated with a sexual offense, which of course they would have been for sexting, because that is now child pornography. It is manufacturing, potentially, it is distributing, and or it is in possession of, depending on what they're doing, whether, you know, but if it's a nude photo of themselves or anyone under the age of 18, that is considered child pornography based on legislation. So we developed a program, again, very new at this, and it was a very taboo subject. Nobody wanted to talk about it because people thought if we talk about it, it's going to encourage other kids to do it. Well, that is just not the case, right? They already knew about it and they were already probably doing it. But our approach was very much, don't do it. It's against the law, bad, no, right? And that was really sort of what we had done at first. And then as we started seeing an influx of kids coming through and we started working closer with, you know, what was going on, we started realizing, oh, like there's more to this than we thought. And of course, over time, we ended up expanding our service delivery to the age of 6. So now we service kids from 6 to 18. And the reason for that is 10 years old is not prevention. At 10 years old, because of the internet, the things that our kids are involved in right now are things what perhaps maybe a 15 or a 17-year-old would have been involved in 10 years ago. So we essentially thought, if we're going to be proactive, if we're truly going to be preventative, we need to hit them at 6, kindergarten, hopefully. Today, 2023, I'm going to say we need to hit them when they're 2-3 years old, unfortunately. Yes. However, when we talk about sort of how we're doing that and what we're doing as an organization, we're looking at essentially providing programs. Again, in 2009, we had one program, it was for shoplifters, and it was called the Stop Lift program. Again, don't steal, it's bad, against the law, boom, right? And now, again, we also have drastically changed because we also understand a shoplifter is no longer just a shoplifter. It's a Pandora box of why are they shoplifting? So our service delivery model has changed in the sense of why are you doing what you're doing? Regardless of what young person comes through our door, we do a risk needs assessment, which means we try to figure out what is contributing to your behavior. Because at the end of the day, if you're shoplifting because you're hungry, me providing you with a program about like a stop lift or a shoplift program is not going to deal with the fact that you're hungry and you're not eating and you're stealing because you need to fill your belly, right? So we need to address the hunger first before we can address why shoplifting is wrong, right? If they have substance abuse issues, again, if they're breaking into homes or doing something because they need money in order to get money for drugs or whatever the case might be, again, we need to deal with the issue, right? So that's where the risk needs assessment comes in. Again, something that we weren't doing prior to 2009, because again, I mean, I don't think a lot of people were doing it at the time. And so these are things that we start to do because we realize a kid is not just a bad kid because they woke up in the morning and said, I'm going to do this bad thing today. Oftentimes there are contributing factors, and that's really what we're looking at. So when we started exploring how we're going to do this in the sense of, you know, our youth justice and outreach program and how we can combine these two service deliveries, essentially what we started saying was, okay, so obviously we have to adhere to the Youth Criminal Justice Act in the sense of doing the extrajudicial measures and extrajudicial sanctions. They're mouthfuls. Essentially, it's a pre-charge or a post-charge program, which means police are either referring them because we're trying to avoid a charge, or the Crown attorneys are referring them because they're trying to avoid a criminal record. To me, it's one and the same. We don't treat them any differently. Essentially, we're providing them with a second chance to learn either skills to make better choices, to say no to peer pressure, or to provide an intervention to help them, again, make some good choices. Bless you. And then the outreach component of that is the 6 to 18 in the sense of, you know what, maybe your child has been involved in what could be potentially criminal behavior, but maybe the police don't have the evidence to lay a charge. They can still refer to us. What oftentimes happens is we have teachers or educators referring to us because, again, their young person or a student has been involved in something at school. They need an intervention. Maybe they've been expelled or excluded and they want them to come back to school, but they want them to participate in the program. Great, we can do that. Sometimes it's a parent saying, you know what, I'm giving my kid a device. I don't necessarily know what's going on out there in the world. Can you help me provide them with an education as to what they're doing, what they're going to be exposed to? Great, that's what we do. So we do all different types of things. And the stigma when it comes to the type of youth that we serve still remains the same. We hear it from time to time where parents are like, well, I don't know if I want to refer my kid to youth diversion because they're going to be around all those bad kids, or they're going to, like, you know, pick up negative behaviors, or they're going to learn criminal things. We're not the old school juvie, right? Like, we're not jail for youth. And our youth are no different from the kids that are at your kid's school, right? And I always say, like, whether they're with us or at school, they're still the same kids. They're all the same. Every kid in my eyes is at risk. If your kid is online, which most of them are from toddlerhood, right? Mine included. I have 3 kids, 6, 8, and 10. So I'm in it as well. You know, they are at risk, whether it's low self-esteem, whether it's peer pressure, whether it is, you know, body image issues, eating disorders, or potential exposure to predators online, to, you know, this hypersexualization of society that we live in, where they're putting themselves in positions, sexual positions, to do things or be a part of things that they don't necessarily comprehend because Instagram says so, right? So this is what they're looking at. This is what they think is true, what they should be doing. And so we are seeing an influx of a lot of concerns. And that's why when I say every kid is at risk, they really are. They're 100% at risk of all of the above and more. So when we look at the things that we do as an organization to address this, we provide a number of different programs. And so I have a list here for you. I'm not going to get into every single one. One of the ones that we have specific to our youth justice kids is the Youth Justice Committee. You might have read about it in the paper. It's been publicized a couple of times with respect to different cases that we've dealt with. Here in Tecumseh, Lacasse Park was burnt down a couple of years ago, you might recall. So the young person that was involved with that actually came through. So essentially a Youth Justice Committee brings together a victim and an offender. It's part of the Youth Criminal Justice Act. And essentially it's a mediation of sorts where we're basically holding the young person accountable for their actions. It's very restorative in nature. Again, that's where the restorative justice piece comes in. but they're essentially coming forward and saying, I know I've done something wrong. I need to repair this harm. And this is what I'm going to do about that. And so it provides an opportunity for the community to learn, to have a voice, but it also provides those that have been impacted to say, this is how you've impacted me and this is what you've done. And that experience specifically here locally was a beautiful opportunity because we had the CAO, the mayor at the time come in, and they came in with their own sort of impression of what happened and what transpired and who these kids were. Because again, the media paints them in a specific light. They were not portrayed as being very nice kids or having done anything that was of benefit to that situation. Mind you, the young person actually tried to put out the fire himself. Again, these two kids, not a good choice by any means, but they were playing with fire. I feel like that is not something completely unusual for kids to do. Brought into a place that was very flammable. Again, not good thinking, but we also know that kids are not the best of thinkers when it comes to being able to think ahead. So they brought it to a park, it caught fire, very flammable. The one kid actually tried to stomp it out, put it out himself as he called for 911. He got second and third degree burns to his legs. None of that was reported. When the police came, he had said to the police, I did this, my friend who ran away also was involved. And so essentially, again, he was quite forthcoming right from the get-go, but nonetheless, we dealt with him. And so one of the things that we really wanted to do was to bring these two parties together. And so we had the young person come in and, you know, again, the media was painting them as being, you know, rude and mean, and that they were trying to be vindictive to kids with special needs because this was a park that was intended to be inclusive. And, you know, how could they have done this? The kid himself had two siblings with special needs. He's like, I don't have a vendetta against kids with special needs. Like my brothers have special needs. He came from a single home, a single mom who was trying to make ends meet. She had 3 jobs on the go. Again, 3 children, 2 with special needs. If you have a child with special needs, you understand and appreciate the extra level of effort that goes into taking care of children that requires additional supports. And so she had her hands full. And he came in wearing his uncle's, you know, suit and tie, took it so seriously. And he said, like, listen, I know the damage that was caused. I know I can never repay the town for what I've done, but I just celebrated a birthday and here's $50 that I have from it. Please take it and, you know, let this at least contribute to the cost in some way, shape, or form. And everyone broke down in tears. I can't tell you the impact that had. I actually just ran into Mayor Gary McNara not long ago, and he to this day remembers what happened and how that impacted him, because you can't leave a situation like that and not have it impact you and change your view of not only youth and youth crime, which we know is a hot topic, especially in today's age when it comes to accountability. But we also know that that young person left there having been impacted. When we talk with the criminal justice system, you can go through point A of having committed an offense to potentially going to court and never once taking responsibility for your actions. You can be found guilty and never admit guilt in our criminal justice system. With youth diversion and, you know, EJM or EJF, you have to admit guilt. That's part of the process. You have to take accountability. If they do not take accountability, they are not an appropriate candidate. So that already right there, because again, oftentimes people say, well, that's soft on crime. That's being, you know, easy. Well, I don't know about you, but if I've done something to hurt somebody, whether it was intentional or not, whether it was criminal or not, it is hard for most of us to look someone in the eyes and say, I'm sorry for what I did to you, and this is what I'm going to do to make it right. Most of us as adults can't do that. So to be put in a room with people you don't know, intimidating setting for some, especially a child, and then to say to them, you need to talk about something that is very shameful to you, something that is potentially embarrassing, and you know, you need to be vulnerable and tell them why you did this and what you're going to do about it. I'm going to tell you right now, they're crapping with their pants, right? Like they're scared, they're intimidated. Of course, who wouldn't be? I would be, right? So they will not forget that. And the whole point of it is not to scare them, because we know scared straight doesn't work. But the whole point of that conversation is for them to understand you've done something wrong. Look at the way that this impacted people. Use that to understand going forward what your actions can do, but also now you're going to be part of the process to make it right. And so what did he do? He was actually asked to be on the youth council for the town so that he can contribute going forward when it comes to different decisions that might be made, so he can have a voice to speak to things. And they essentially said to him that they want him to participate in our rebound program, and that to keep the money, they were going to take the money. They wanted him to help his mom with the money. And it was a beautiful experience for everybody. So again, something that is very impactful, and I would say perhaps much more than him going to court. Some of the other programs that we provide are like the KYPP, so our hashtag Keep Your Privates Private. That is for, as you can imagine, is for kids from 6 to 18. We have it broken down by female and male because, again, different issues, but we also have it broken down by age, so 6 to 10, 10 to 12, and then 12 to 17. And we talk about sort of everything under the moon when we talk about the wild, wild web, which is what I call it, the wild, wild web. And we talk about everything from consent to healthy relationships. We talk about, sexting. We talk about pornography. I mean, kids are exposed to pornography so early, and we're not talking about, vanilla porn, or we're not talking about something that maybe someone saw in a Playboy, 40 years ago. We're talking about very degrading, violent acts that children are reenacting. So, when we have this in our society, we need to start opening our eyes to having conversations very early on. And we do it in an age appropriate way, of course, but these are conversations that have to happen, especially with respect to consent and even self-respect, respect for others, self-esteem, peer pressure. Again, kids are very much prone to taking a photo or receiving a photo and then saying, oh, by the way, everyone, look what I did, or look what I got, and again, is it any different from what perhaps happened 56 years ago? No, probably not, but just very different in the sense that this is very public. And this has long-lasting impact and repercussions for everybody involved. Whereas, I don't know, whatever was going on before, whether someone, got some panties from someone, shared it with someone and said, look what I got. No one had to see that. That didn't have to go further than that conversation. Things ended where they began oftentimes historically. Now it doesn't end ever. And that's really what we're dealing with here. We also have our Rebound Life Choices program, which is our 10-week long program. That program is amazing. It is our favorite. We have some of our kids that come in there kicking and screaming and dropping F-bombs because they don't want to be there. And then they beg to stay. And so we have this program. It's basically mentor based. We've got about 2 or 3 mentors per table. So a table would consist of about 5 kids. It is franchised. It's a scientifically based model in terms of working with young people and matching them up based on their strengths and any challenges that they might have. Amazing. We've also have guest speakers that come out and speak about their experiences depending on what the topic is, and activities, and we feed them and they love it. They have a graduation at the end. And so of course they want to come back, because sometimes these kids have never had anything like this given to them. Some kids have never had someone to look up to, and now they have these people who care about them and who follow up about things, and they have a safe place to be who they are and enjoy themselves. So love this program. We've got the time to lag for all of our excessive gamers, because we've got kids who play games that don't want to go to school, they don't want to shower, they don't want to eat. Again, who are they talking to when it comes to predators and online grooming? Gamers, that is a real vulnerable population for most parents who don't even understand that that's the case. Definitely deal with all of that. We've got our laws, which is our shoplift program. So again, that's for all of our shoplifters, but like stealers, I want to say. So the car hoppers, perhaps kids that might be stealing from other kids' lockers. And, again, it's easy for us to make judgments and to maybe say, oh, well, that's, bad kid, he's a thief or whatever. But again, why is he stealing, right? And I say he because the majority of our clients are males. However, that is also shifting. So, when we talk about why someone might steal, we also have to look at what's going on. And in today's day and age, with the cost of living and the different financial hardships that families are facing, there are kids who are stealing because they want to be like their peers. And it is very difficult to do that, to fit in and not be bullied because you don't have the clothes, you don't have the lifestyle or whatever. And again, when we're looking at the pressure, we were all part of that pressure, but it was on a much smaller scale. They are inundated with information about these lavish lifestyles on a daily basis, 24/7, based on what they have on their phone, right? And when they are constantly looking at this world that they can never potentially realistically actually have, some of them go to extreme measures to achieve that. And sometimes that means I'm going to steal some kids' AirPods because I want to have something that is a status symbol to make me be closer to what I think is cool. Then we've got the Teen Intervene program. So the Teen Intervene is for our, I want to say dabblers when it comes to substance abuse, whether it is marijuana or alcohol. And again, this is starting sooner and sooner when it comes to what they're doing, what they're experimenting with, and what that looks like. And so that program is really intended to be a prevention-based educational model where we're looking at providing them with strategies to either avoid peer pressure or to reduce or stop altogether whatever that they're participating in. Okay, so you might be thinking, well, what else do you guys do? Because you're probably not busy enough, right? So on top of the service delivery that we do, we also provide presentations. So we actually go into the schools and we do presentations to schools from, both public and Catholic and French for that matter, from JK to grade 12. And actually St. Clair College too, we do the See Different program there with, and See Different is our newest one, which talks about diversity and equity. But we're really looking at respecting people for their differences and understanding differences and why diversity is important in our community. And so we do that at the college level, again, with respect to preparing some of the students for the workforce, but primarily we do this in the elementary and secondary schools. And so essentially we do presentations on bullying, and we do presentations on, again, the KYPP, the Keep Your Privates Private. That's our hotline. Everybody wants to talk about that because we need to provide them with this information. And then the See Different as well. So we do the presentations, and then we, again, started exploring, if we're looking at kids and providing them this information, great, we're educating them, we're doing our part. However, if anyone has ever taken French in elementary school, you know that if you learn something and it is not used on a regular basis, you will forget it. I learned French in elementary. All I know is bonjour, je m'appelle, like basic understanding, right? So when we talk about this, use it or lose it, even though we might provide them with the education, if the parents at home aren't having these conversations and reiterating that message, then they're going to forget it and they're going to fall back into whatever that they were doing or just pick up new things. Because again, the online world doesn't sleep, right? And so at that point we thought, well, what are we going to do? How are we going to get this message to parents? So we started this hashtag Parenting Unplugged. And essentially that began with presentations to parents. So I do the presentations for all of the parents. And we talk about everything from the digital culture. So again, parents don't necessarily understand what digital culture is. Why are they so drawn to this internet thing, right? We talk about why are they so drawn? What is the draw? We talk about what the concerns are. We talk about strategies as to how to help parents navigate this parental issue, this epidemic is what I call it, right? When it comes to raising our kids today. And so we do webinars, we do podcasts, and we do a number of different things. And right now, at the point that we are currently at, we have parents that are saying to us, we need more. And we are exploring basically doing a parenting program. So that is our next plan of attack. I don't know when that will happen, but it's something that we're currently working on, and we're essentially looking for some avenues to pursue that so that we're able to do that to the best capacity. So this is our presentation that we provide for parents. We do the good, the bad, the ugly of social media and your kid. Again, is it all bad? No, of course not. I mean, it's part of our world. And by no means are we ever saying that abstinence is the answer when it comes to the internet and your child. It's not a possibility. We're just saying we need to build resilience. We need to help educate kids. And like I said, 6 years old at this point in time is already too late when it comes to education. When we say 2 or 3 years old, I know people are like, what are you talking about? They can barely speak. But we have to start providing kids very, very early on with understanding of what are red flags, what to look out for, right? What is a predator? What might they be looking for? What might they be saying to you? And it doesn't have to be like this awkward conversation where we're sitting on a couch and we're talking about the birds and the bees, like maybe we had when we were kids. It's really a day-to-day conversation. You're in the car, what are you on? What are your kids, what are your friends posting online? Is anything concerning to you? And that really is essentially what we do in the grand scheme of things, when it comes to also educating parents about, again, dangers and things that they need to be aware of. So I'm going to leave that with you in terms of what we do. We are online if you need us. Of course, we have a website, social media, because we can't not be on social media. And I'll be around for a few minutes if you want to ask any questions. Thank you.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
And you're a fast talker.
Yes.
So that was great. How many are in your team or your staff? Like how many of you are
There's
there?
3 of us and an administrative assistant.
Wow.
Yeah. So we hustle. Yes.
The other thing is that playground we paid for
Oh,
originally.
That was one of our
That was one of our
Really?
projects,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
original playground.
Yeah.
So that,
yes.
yes, now
Yeah,
we
so that was
understand.
nice
So
that you
thank you
shared
for
that
sharing
story
that
with
Well,
with
I'm
us.
glad that I was able to share that with you because you know what, it was a beautiful moment for everybody that was involved in that youth justice committee. It really was a full circle. And so this is that much more of a full circle moment because they were very, very sorry for what they had done to kids. And unfortunately, it was not publicized the way that it should have.
Thank you for sharing that. John, I think you had a quick
I was
question.
just quick, the most dangerous apps, I was interested to hear your opinion on that. There seems to be a concern about TikTok.
Oh, yeah.
These kids are on TikTok all day. They take their phones to bed with them at night. Their brain is not getting enough rest. They're making bad decisions, bad dietary decisions as well. We had this discussion in class yesterday, and an Indian student from East India said, we're not allowed TikTok in our country. Come to find out, a Chinese student, they're limited to how many minutes a day they can go on TikTok. There's nice of the Chinese, they allow us to go on TikTok as long as we want. And kids are getting TikTok brain as a result. And TikTok's just one of the apps they live on. There's an obsession there. Do you believe that we can do more to limit free society, to limit the amount of use that people are, children especially, are using these apps?
Limiting time is one thing. However, and I say this as a parent, there's some days where they're going to be on there more or less, depending on what's happening that day, right? When it comes to screen time and their exposure to the content, my bigger issue is not so much how much time they're spending online, it's what they're doing, right? And so to potentially monitor the time that they're on an app might be useful. However, even if they're on there for, let's say, I don't know, half an hour a day, what are they actually exposed to, right? And we know the model between China, especially, and North America is so different in the sense of, in China, kids are exposed to TikTok content that is based on science and math, STEM, where here it is 100% sexualized from the get-go, whether it's the dancing, whether it is, just the outfits that they're wearing, everything is sexual. And the message is immediately, you're either sexy or you're invisible, and no kid wants to be invisible. And so girls very quickly understand sex sells and I need to be sexy in order to get likes, because it's all about the likes, right? And the boys very quickly understand this is what is expected. I expect the girls to be this way, look this way. It's okay for me to act this way. And we have a very convoluted understanding of what's acceptable. So again, screen time and the amount of time that they might be spending online might be helpful, but in my opinion, it really isn't even the time, it's more so the content. What is the content that they're exposed to? Because that's what they're gonna hang on to, right?
Man, it's my pleasure to thank you this morning for
Thank
coming
you.
out. It's a very, very informative speech. And if we had half the energy you do every morning, we get up early. We don't have that kind of energy. But it's a very interesting program. I'll take this opportunity to thank you on behalf of the whole club for coming out.
Thank you.
And give an excellent speech.
Thank you
We have
so
a small
much.
gift for you
Oh,
for coming out.
I love that. Thank you so very much. Appreciate it. Thank you. Sure.